We are officially in week 1. Today is Monday as we're recording this, and we thought we'd bring you guys a really fun video. I imagine a lot of you guys have had your drafts already. Of course, if you didn't, you can check out all of our other content, but we are going to break down our My Guys for the 2024 NFL fantasy football season, going through it in fantasy football style: a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex. So should be a fun video. But before we get into the actual content of this video, make sure this fantasy football season you are on Underdog Fantasy. New customers right now can deposit, get up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you use the promo code FSE. When you use FSE, you are also going to get our weekly rankings all season long. You'll be able to set your fantasy football lineups using our weekly rankings. Our Vegas information gives you insight on, what games are going to be high scoring and things of that nature. And right now, heading into the week 1 slate, you have this free pick'em for Travis Kelce, half a total yard. And as we've teased this offseason, we are sending one lucky FSC code user 2 tickets to go watch their favorite team. We will announce that on the Thursday live stream before the NFL season kicks off. And there's tons of other promos that you guys can check out on Underdog all week long. They got deposit match days. They got, vulture protection. They got tons of stuff going on. I'm sure Danny's all excited about this Dak.
Get that Dak pick, baby.
Yeah, you got to get on Underdog, of course. Like I said, get our weekly rankings and get those deposit matches. So let's start with our My Guys, Danny. Let's go through our quarterbacks back and forth. Again, we have covered these guys in depth in terms of overall analysis. I don't know about you, Danny. I am really tired of yapping about players. So we're just going to break down exactly why these guys are our My Guys. So let's get things kicked off here. Danny, who is your My Guy at the quarterback position?
Yeah, my guy at the quarterback position is actually going to be Kyler Murray, quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals, a guy that is going off the board, as the quarterback 7, quarterback 8 in a lot of your drafts. And he's a guy I currently have ranked as my quarterback 6, very close to being my quarterback 5 with Anthony Richardson. And he's a guy, when I look at Kyler Murray, has the opportunity to be a tier 1 fantasy football quarterback. This is the best offensive situation he's been in his career. I would take rookie Marvin Harrison Jr. over past his prime DeAndre Hopkins. Trey McBride obviously showing what he was able to do down the stretch last year. Going into the season fully healthy, Kyler Murray, when he's been healthy, has been one of the premier rushing threats at the quarterback position. We saw just a couple years ago, 800 yards, 10 rushing touchdowns. I think that's well within the range of possibilities with him coming off the ACL. This is a quarterback in his prime with the, like I said, best offensive situation of his career that has the opportunity to be a 25, 28 plus passing touchdown quarterback while also contributing a ton with his legs. So whether you're in a 4-point or a 6-point league, I do think Kyler Murray has very good viability in each league setting.
Yeah, for sure. I think the 8-9 rush attempts per game that he was at 2020, 2021, when he was at his best, he was a top 5 fantasy quarterback in points per game both of those years. We could see now, second year removed from the ACL tear, him get back to that rushing threat status. And like you said, Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, even Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, some of the other guys, 2 good running backs capable in the backfield. I think the Cardinals offense could really surprise a lot of people. And Kyler Murray has been pretty much all offseason one of my favorite kind of mid-round quarterback targets in best ball drafts and in redraft leagues as well. Because I think in redraft leagues, especially when quarterbacks are generally pushed up the board relative to best ball leagues, you get a good rushing discounted quarterback. You don't have to pay for Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen when Kyler Murray is available 3-4 rounds later.
Like, just for reference, we finished our Listener League redraft league yesterday, and I believe he went in the 6th round. And that's usually, he went at the 6-11 here. And that's actually at the high end I usually see him. Like, sometimes in a lot of your leagues, he may fall to the 7th or 8th. People are calling him injury prone. People are not bought into Kyler Murray because maybe they don't like the way he plays in real life. But hey, it's conducive to fantasy points, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sticking with a rushing quarterback. My guy at the quarterback position is Joe Burrow, probably a little bit better in 6-point leagues, but Joe Burrow to me is going to be on a one-man wrecking crew to go on the revenge tour, because the Bengals have been a little unlucky the last couple of years when it comes to Chase being down and Burrow being down and Higgins being down. I think this might be the year that all of those things kind of click together and we get that nuclear season out of Joe Burrow. We get that 45 touchdown, 5,000 yard type of season, which in my opinion, he is very much capable of. I think he's the 2nd or the 3rd best, depending on what you think of Josh Allen, quarterback real life in the NFL. And he's got 2 great receivers, one of whom, actually both, very motivated to get themselves new contracts on the open market and reset their generational wide receiver contract money there. So I feel really good about Joe Burrow this year. This is, again, a guy that you can usually get round 7, round 8 of most people's drafts, and he could very much perform up to the level of those 3rd, 4th round quarterbacks.
Yeah, especially like you said, in 6-point leagues. I think obviously there's still viability in 4-point leagues, but specifically if you are in a 6-point league, Joe Burrow is one of the handful of quarterbacks, along with like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, Dak Prescott. I would be very hard pressed to see another quarterback in the range of the NFL producing, maybe Matthew Stafford, 35, 40 plus passing touchdowns, 4,500 plus passing yards. We're talking about the offensive insulation, obviously, in Cincinnati, assuming Ja'Marr Chase is fully under contract going into the season, which I think they will be able to get done sooner rather than later. You have him, you have T. Higgins, you have an improving offensive line, you have obviously Chase Brown, Zach Moss in the backfield. I think, like you said, the Cincinnati Bengals are poised to really have a rebound type of season on offense compared to what we saw last year with all the injuries, all the inconsistencies. I think they iron a lot of that out.
Yeah, and I think without Joe Mixon, we could see a lot more passing volume in the red zone specifically. And I think Chase is obviously a great separator. Higgins is huge. Yoshi Vosh has good size. Burton obviously creating big plays as the
good separator
receiver there. Mike Gesicki, if he can do anything, it's get open in the red zone. I feel like we could see a spike in the touchdown rate for Joe Burrow, mainly because I think they're going to throw more in the red zone because as much as I like Chase Brown, it's a pretty unproven backfield. If there was one thing Joe Mixon could do well, it was run in the red zone and punch in the football for 6 points. So I do think that in combination with just hopefully everybody's health aligning, and Burrow's the one that has the health question marks right now, but I'm not overly concerned about it. I know a lot of people may be concerned about the wrist injury. I'm not overly concerned about it.
Yeah, and hopefully for the sake of our eyeballs, it's going to Ja'Marr Chase, it's going to T. Higgins, because I don't know how many Mike Gesicki gritties I can stomach this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Danny, I'll let you rattle off your two running backs. Again, we have talked about these guys all offseason. So if you want more in-depth arguments about these guys, head to our rankings tier list videos, head to our must-draft values by round videos. Like we've talked about these guys on numerous occasions, but who are your two running backs that you love?
My two running backs, it's so funny. I'm just keeping the youth theme, especially if you know how I view the running back position. But Devon Achane, running back of the Miami Dolphins. Jonathon Brooks, running back of the Carolina Panthers. And with Devon Achane, when I'm looking at the running back position outside of my top three guys with Christian McCaffrey, with Breece Hall, with Bijan Robinson, I would say he has the highest ceiling of any other running back in fantasy football. He is the most efficient running back we have seen as a rookie of all time. Yes, over Alvin Kamara, over Jonathan Taylor, over Christian McCaffrey. This is one of the most efficient profiles we have ever seen, attached to a top 5 insulation offense there with Mike McDaniel calling the shots, and a guy that we've heard all offseason has added size, is prepared to handle more on his workload. And again, I'm not going to get too in the depths because obviously he was my number one breakout candidate. My bold prediction was this guy could legitimately be a top 3 running back, 24 plus PPR point per game upside. So he had to be my guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with Achane, you're just hoping that if he gets 15, 18, 20 opportunities per game, they're high value touches, they're targets, they're red zone touches, they're, outside zone type of carries, which we know he can take to the house for 70 plus yards. We both kind of admit that Raheem Mostert should stay involved, but Raheem Mostert's 33 years old, never really finished a full season until last year. I talked about him as one of the biggest sleepers in 2023. Most of the comment section said Raheem Mostert can't stay healthy. So 1 year removed from that narrative is he's going to stay healthy now, a year older.
Yeah, 33-year-old running back who prior to his time in Miami hadn't had a full season played with the San Francisco 49ers. He gets a year older. I mean, he's had some catastrophic injuries over his career. Again, I'm hoping for his sake he's able to stay healthy, but I'm betting on the data here that a 33-year-old more than likely breaks down at some point this year. Going to Jonathon Brooks, I mean, I'm talking about injury with Raheem Mostert. May as well talk about the guy that's literally entering the year hurt. Jonathon Brooks was added to the PUP list, but I mean, I have to represent your Hook'em Horns. Shout out, big game in Michigan this week. Going to be a great time watching our boys fight it out. But with Jonathon Brooks, he has the 3-down profile we are craving. 215 plus pounds, can contribute in the passing game, can run between the tackles. A team with the Carolina Panthers who, despite having a ton of needs on defense, on the offensive line, potentially with the skill players, goes up and trades for a running back coming off a torn ACL inside of the top 50 of the NFL draft. I view with Dave Canales what we saw with Rachaad White last year. Imagine Rachaad White's workload potentially when Jonathon Brooks gets back, except with the player that may actually just be good at football. Because I think Jonathon Brooks is a top 2 running back in this class with Trey Benson. I think Jonathon Brooks, once he does come back, has the upside to be a 20 touch per game, top 12 to 15 running back in fantasy. And because he's on IR, because he's on your PUP, again, if you're in a league that doesn't have an IR, maybe he slips a little bit more. You can get him later on because he will be a 0 on your bench to start the year. But especially if you have an IR spot, you can pop him in. You could take a free upside stat like a Jordan Mason or like a Will Shipley off of waivers to fill that spot. And then once Jonathon Brooks is ready to play in your lineup, you have a legitimate top 15 running back projection.
Yeah, he's got a lot of concerns, so I'm a little bit lower and more pessimistic than you have been on him. But again, if you have an IR spot, like you said, you don't really have to worry about, what those concerns would be because you're not wasting a bench spot holding him for the first 4 games of the year. The other thing that's not great about Jonathon Brooks is the offense that he plays in, but as we kind of just made reference to, the draft capital and the fact that he was a really good prospect, contribute on all 3 downs. I think they want him to be the lead back pretty soon on. And I think maybe the first 4 games being out is a precaution, similar to like we saw Breece Hall come back for week 1 last year and he was on the field right away. Maybe he's on the Breece Hall timeline. It's just that Jonathon Brooks doesn't necessarily need to play those first 4 games because they don't want to get him banged up right away. And he'll have an accelerated role after the first 5 or 6 games of the season. The only worry that I have for Jonathon Brooks is the coaching staff going to dial back his workload year 1 because A, he's a rookie, and B, he's coming off of a major injury. That would be my only concern for him. But generally, like I drafted in my home league in the 8th round because I love throwing him on the IR as a second running back in a hero RB build.
Yeah, that's the way I view it as well. For me with Jonathon Brooks, if you're going to take Jonathon Brooks, let's just say you're in a hero running back or a 0 running back build, you project him to potentially be your RB1 or RB2 going in the longer portion of the year. Structure your running back core around him. If you know you have Jonathon Brooks as your upside piece of your core, fill that out with your Rico Dowdles, with your Brian Robinsons, with your, I mean, I'm not even as big on Gus Edwards, but I got him in the listener league, for example, in the 11th round. If you're surrounding a guy with Jonathon Brooks with early season workloads, even like a guy like Jerome Ford, heck,
Devin Singletary, his teammate Chuba Hubbard.
I was going to say that
one backfield that I'm okay handcuffing because Hubbard will get most of the work while he's out.
Eckler. Yeah, like there's a lot of guys in the 9th+ round area where if you get the early season, touch workload and Jonathon Brooks does end up being that guy that can replace your RB2 spot long term, you're in a great spot. So yeah, I love Jonathon Brooks. Of course, I have to talk about a Texas guy when you're the Hook'em supporter of us. So you got to give me my flowers on that regard.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a little bit worried it's week 6, week 7 before he gets a full workload. But at the same time, if you plan around it, you structure your core around it, then you can definitely get by in the meantime. And he could absolutely win people Best Ball Mania or just their home leagues on the way back week 7, week 8 onward for the rest of the year. So you guys probably know who I'm about to say, Isiah Pacheco and James Cook. I have been notoriously very supportive of these 2 guys, and it's a pretty similar case for both players. I mean, Isiah Pacheco, year 3 running back, James Cook, year 3 running back. Both of them play for what I consider to be top 5 to 10 offenses with 2 of the best 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. Isiah Pacheco, the major concern for him, I would say, was that he's maybe not as good as some of the other lead backs that are going in the first 2 to 3 rounds of fantasy football drafts. But when you stack up the case, he's got an elite offensive line, his receiving uptick that we're kind of expecting for him, even with the Samaje Perine signing, we saw it down the stretch last year. He was like a 30% rep participation guy. Then into the playoffs, he was 45, 50%. Again, Perine's going to come on the field in 3rd and 12 and probably protect the quarterback. Not going to deny that, but I still think Isiah Pacheco can be a 75, 80% opportunity share at the high end for one of the best offenses in the league, get most of the red zone touches. And same goes for James Cook. Red zone touches are the things that is keeping him down. A lot of people don't know that he's a 1,700-yard running back in his 2nd season last year. Like that is a crazy, crazy output of yardage to only score 6 touchdowns, to only score 2 of them on the ground. And this offense, as I've said on numerous occasions, needs an identity. They don't have a current identity without Stephon Diggs, without Gabriel Davis. They have a big collection, a big gaggle of wide receivers, none of which are proven. So I think James Cook is going to be the way that this offense runs. And 15 rushing touchdowns for Josh Allen. Do you want to put your quarterback in harm's way that much? I do think James Cook has added some size. I do think he's going to be the guy that punches in more red zone touchdowns this year.
I'm so glad you mentioned the identity as well, because you said they don't have an identity. They actually showed us our identity down the stretch last year. They were a team that wants to run the ball between the tackles. I mean, we were at the game against the Cowboys where they basically ran the Cowboys off the field in the run game. I mean, James Cook really performed down the stretch, a guy that going from year 1 to year 2 increases overall carry workload from 91 to 237 carries. We're talking about a guy that we were never sure would be a full-time 1A in a backfield. Like we were talking about his time at Georgia where he was an efficient, tandem back, but we weren't sure if he can handle 200+ carries. He did that last year in his 2nd year. He is still attached to a potential top 10 offense with Buffalo. I mean, he was, I believe, my number 2 breakout on that video. I'm fully bought into the fact that James Cook will be an RB1 this year, and people are kind of treating him like, oh, he's going to have to go after the Josh Jacobs of the world, the Derrick Henrys of the world, the Joe Mixons of the world, Rashad Whites of the world. I would much rather have those guys. Like James Cook is the one running back outside of the first 2 rounds I'm willing to take in the 3rd round. Obviously, that would more so be at the 3-4 turn. Let's say at the 1-2 turn, you were locked out of Jahmyr Gibbs and you started with, let's just say, Puka Nacua and Marvin Harrison Jr. If you wanted to grab your hero running back in round 3 with James Cook, I'm perfectly okay with that. And with Isiah Pacheco, let me run this hypothetical to you. Isiah Pacheco is a between the tackles grinder on a top 3 projected offense that's going to get 18 to 20 carries per game. Genuinely, what's the difference between him and Jonathan Taylor's projection?
No, and I mean, you could definitely make the argument that Isiah Pacheco, I mean, he had like 50 plus targets last year. Like, there's a very good chance that he has a much better receiving workload than Jonathon Taylor. The only argument against Pacheco versus Taylor is that Taylor is better than
It's
Isiah
proven.
Pacheco. And he definitely is better than Isiah Pacheco. But sometimes fantasy football is kind of like right place, right time, especially at the running back position, which is very opportunity based. And as much as I think, Anthony Richardson will elevate the offense in Indianapolis,
Patrick
I mean, he's not
Mahomes is
going to
going to.
elevate Patrick Mahomes level, and he's also going to potentially steal red zone touches from Jonathon Taylor. So yeah, I think you can definitely make the argument that Isiah Pacheco versus like Barkley, even I could group into that, and Jonathon Taylor, there's not a huge difference between those players. And the other thing too is like 237 carries for James Cook. Dude, you give him exactly that amount of carries. Again, I'd be totally fine with that. Just give him more targets. Without Diggs and Gabe Davis in the offense, you could make the argument that he has 90 to 100 plus target upside.
It's just funny to me because, like, yeah, his touchdown equity as a whole last year wasn't the greatest. But like we said, 4 of his touchdowns came in the last 7 games with Joe Brady. And we're talking about a near 300 touch running back in his second year attached to a Josh Allen-led offense. Like, any other situation, any other year, this would be a guy we're taking in the top 15 of our drafts.
Dude, in 2018 or 2019, the year that Kenyon Drake went at the 1-2 turn, like what was the difference between Kenyon Drake's projection that year and James Cook's
Drake was worse.
Now?
Drake was worse.
Drake's was worse. So I don't know what the hell we're doing taking James Cook in like the 5th round of underdog drafts or like the 4th round of home league drafts. I just really don't get it. That's what these my guys are. We're the fantasy stock exchange. We're basically looking at this and we're like, the market value.
Which stocks are we betting on, baby? Players. Yeah, which stocks are we betting on rising? And I'm glad you mentioned that with James Cook being a 5th rounder on underdog. I have like 24% James Cook in my portfolio right now.
Yeah, exactly. So let's try and speed this up a little bit, Danny. Let's get you into your wide receivers here. We'll talk about the flex at the end. Just go through Nico and Rashee Rice.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the biggest no-brainer. If you guys have been watching the content throughout the offseason, Rashee Rice and Nico Collins have been 2 guys I've been pounding the table for. I'll start off with Nico Collins, a 6'4", 215-pound ball winner, as you guys have probably heard me make the case for multiple times this offseason. Attached to CJ Stroud and a potential top 5 offense, with CJ Stroud expected to throw the ball more than he did in his rookie season. He's going into year 2. Yes, I understand they added Stephon Diggs. People are going to look at, well, this is all the volume Nico got last year. Now they add Diggs. Like, how can he have more slice of a pie if Diggs is added to this offense? Adding Stephon Diggs will inherently increase the volume of the passing attempts we see in this offense. Not to mention, we have seen from a preseason usage standpoint, every single personnel setting, 21 personnel, 12 personnel, 11 personnel, the one wide receiver that is on the field for every single one of those packages is Nico Collins, a guy that graded in the 90th percentile and above in man and press coverage, a guy that graded second to CeeDee Lamb in man coverage composite score. Like, Nico Collins is the league-winning wide receiver that people are treating as a wide receiver 2 right now, and that's just not sitting right to me. To me, with Nico Collins, I think he has a very good case to be valued in the Puka Nacua, Marvin Harrison Jr. range. The only question mark we have is how the target hierarchy is going to be. But the way I view this offense is Nico Collins is going to be the number 1 target in the hierarchy, and Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs are the ones going to be eating off each other.
Yeah, I remember after Justin Jefferson's rookie year, people were worried that Adam Thielen was going to steal a lot of touches from him or a lot of targets from him. And then if you just looked at Jefferson's peripherals, you were like, this guy's like a superstar player. And everything that we have about Nico Collins tells us that he's a superstar player. So I know the projection bros are like oh God, how is this target share going to be distributed?
I got roasted for that
trade. It puts
trade.
you in a bind to think about it. Like, it really does. Like, it's really hard to get there with Nico Collins being a 25-30% target share guy, because Diggs can earn targets and because Dell can earn targets and because even Schultz and Mixon can earn targets. But I promise you, just like close your eyes and hope for the best with Nico Collins. That's basically the approach you need to take.
Just trust elite players in elite situations. That's exactly what Nico Collins is. And it's funny because, I mean, we're talking about it with the hindsight that if you guys actually followed the Flock League, where we've posted 2 videos right now, the draft vlog and a trade vlog recently, but I made a trade that people are very conflicted on. People do not like my side.
They're not conflicted on it. They hate your side.
They hate my side. But man, if Nico Collins lives up to the upside, I do believe for him to be my guy, I don't see a way where he doesn't pay off to that level. Like, genuinely speaking, it's as simple, like you said, of elite player meets elite quarterback meets elite situation.
Yeah, exactly. And with Rashee Rice, I'm sure you're going to just make the argument that we assume he's not going to get suspended. That's pretty much the asterisk right now. And he's being drafted as such. Like, nobody's been taking him in their league in the 9th round thinking he's going to miss 6 games this year. Like, if he was going to get suspended, I mean, we're 3 days away from the NFL season. The Chiefs play on Thursday. Like, we would hear something if Rashee Rice was suspended. He is not expected to be exempt, not expected to be suspended, probably until the legal situation plays out in 2025. Most likely is when his suspension is probably going to come.
Yeah, and I know AJ's listening to this right now, licking his lips that Rashee Rice is my guy, considering he literally sniped me on Rashee Rice, a pick before in the listener league draft last night. But yeah, like you said, you're attached to Patrick Mahomes. It's going to be a top 3 to 5 offense. Rashee Rice has the most specialized role of the wide receivers on the field. Marquise Brown, Xavier Worthy stretching the field vertically. Travis Kelce obviously being a do-it-all tight end. But with Rashee Rice, he is the specialized yards after catch player. And we saw once he became a full-time player down the stretch last year, was averaging over 16 PPR points per game. That would have equated to a wide receiver 1 finish last year as a rookie. You're still getting Patrick Mahomes. You're still getting a guy that was literally a top 12 wide receiver, except because of the suspension news, people are docking him down to the wide receiver 30 in drafts.
Yeah, not to mention they add Worthy, they add Marquise Brown, but as we've talked about on numerous occasions, the way that this offense operates is that Kelce and Rice are going to move the chains, and we saw Rice heavily involved in the red zone as well last year. He was a good short area separator. Worthy, Marquise Brown, they're going to be more intermediate to deep targets, maybe some design touches as well, but for the most part, these guys all kind of have specialized roles, and Rice, the underlying peripherals of his PFF receiving grade, his yards per route run, things of that nature that rookie wide receivers generally don't perform very well in. He was basically a top 15 receiver in the NFL last year. So with Rice, I feel pretty good that you're getting a guy that legitimately can win you the league if you're getting him round 5, round 6, where he's going in ADP. Obviously, in sharper leagues, he goes like round 4. But if you guys drafted him in round 6, like I'm sure a lot of you did, if you drafted a week ago or even 2 weeks ago, he was probably going way down there. He's the type of guy that is perfect, like flex option in your 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league.
Yeah, he is literally that perfect option. If you were drafting him at anything other than a wide receiver 2, like if he started off with a hero running back build and you're grabbing Rashee Rice in round 4 after you selected, let's just say, Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, and then you're getting Rashee Rice, like that is the perfect wide receiver trio. Not to mention, you're probably pairing that at that point with a Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, or Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, absolutely. So Danny's my guys at wide receiver. Let's rip into mine here. Brandon Aiyuk and Malik Nabers. Brandon Aiyuk is exactly the same as Nico Collins. Like they're the exact same projection. I'm betting on who I think is the best wide receiver in a very, very crowded offense with a lot of good players, except I've already seen Brandon Aiyuk do it. I've already seen him command elite target share, command elite downfield usage. With Debo playing 14 plus games last year, with Kittle playing 15 plus games last year, with McCaffrey playing 16 games last year, it's pretty likely that those 3 guys, one of them will miss extended time given their injury histories, given their age. Aiyuk is the youngest. He's the most talented, and he has the most valuable targets as well, the downfield work, the red zone work. And if Brock Purdy and the 49ers offense unleash the ball more than the 32nd most pass attempts in the NFL this year, I think Brandon Aiyuk, now that he's got his big contract, now that he's ready to be settled in here, has a chance to have a monster season. He was wide receiver 15, wide receiver 16 in points per game last year. I do think you could see that elevate because he is one of the best 5-6 receivers in the NFL legitimately. Separation wise, he was 90th percentile across the board, man zone press coverage, according to Matt Harmon's perception. And he is a dynamite downfield wide receiver. Every target he gets from an accurate quarterback and one of the best schemed offenses in the NFL for one of the best receivers in the NFL, 3 targets for Brandon Aiyuk is all he needs some games, man. Like he doesn't need 170 targets like Devontae Adams is going to need with the Raiders.
Yeah, 100%. When you're looking at what Brandon Aiyuk was doing last year from a pure efficiency per target standpoint, he averaged almost 13 yards per target on the volume that he got. Like that's absurd. Like I understand like you want to see the targets go from like 105 to like the 120, 130 range.
They probably will go up a little bit this year, to be honest.
Well, the other thing is like people will point to the overall volume of this offense. And while I do think it's going to be a run heavy offense, I mean, you've pointed this out a couple times. Christian McCaffrey is another year older, another 350 touch workload under his belt this past season. Brock Purdy's going into year 3, maybe takes a step up as a player. Like we could very well see them go from the 32nd type of volume offense in the passing game to maybe even the 26th or 27th. And while people are hearing, 26, 27, that's not great. Like there's a big difference between finishing 26, 27 volume versus 32.
Yeah, if they have 65, 70 more pass attempts, so we're talking 10 more targets, 12 more targets, maybe 20 more targets for Brandon Aiyuk. And that is, when you average 18 yards per reception like he did last year, that is a lot of extra volume going your way. That's an extra couple big plays. That's an extra touchdown or 2. He is a really good option. And Malik Nabers is my guy at the wide receiver position. And we talk about Malik Nabers so much that I'll save you guys the details. I talked about him in my breakouts video. He was my number 1 breakout. And the reason he's my number 1 breakout is because I think he's so good that he'll make the Giants offense functional. That's basically the argument here. I get that the Giants offense last year without Daniel Jones for 11 games and without any wide receiver talent whatsoever, Darren Waller was their number 1 last year. They were a top 16 offense 2 years ago with a healthy Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins, and Darius Slayton. Malik Nabers, Jalen Hyde, and Wandale are all 3 upgrades at the wide receiver position. They have Brian Daboll, who won Coach of the Year 2 years ago. He is the type of coach that can elevate this offense, and Malik Nabers is the type of alpha wide receiver 1 that can elevate the play of a pedestrian quarterback like Daniel Jones. 2 years ago, a guy we consider a pedestrian quarterback like Derek Carr led Devontae Adams to a top 6 finish, and the Raiders were a lot better than people thought that year. And it was because it's the chicken and the egg. Like, is the offense bad because they have bad players? Okay, well, when you inject a elite player like Malik Nabers projects to be second best wide receiver prospect the last 8 years, then aren't they going to be better as a result? Like, that's why they were bad last year, is because they had Tommy freaking DeVito, who lived at his mom's house starting half the season.
Yeah, no, 100%. I've actually made this case on Mason channel before, and people didn't even understand the reference of chicken versus the egg. So shout out that short. But all jokes aside, with Malik Nabers, like you said, if he is the type of talent we both think he is, like, he could very well after this year be amongst the top 10 overall wide receivers talent-wise in the league. If you're getting that level of talent anywhere outside of the first 24 picks of your draft, I understand the offense is a concern, but you have to take that swing, especially in a full PPR league where you're looking at the complexion of the Giants wide receiver core. There's no reason why he can't, if he's that level of talent, a 140, 150 type of target workload. So with Malik Nabers, like you said, I think he's a type of talent that can ascend this offense. I don't think he's going to be carried down by it. I think he's going to put it on his shoulders and carry it up.
Yeah, especially when you consider like him versus Harrison, for example. I think it would be more detrimental for Harrison to be in the Giants offense than it is for Nabers, because Nabers is a yards after the catch downfield guy. And Daniel Jones is actually a half decent deep passer. And not to mention, Daniel Jones doesn't have to do a whole lot to throw Malik Nabers a screen pass and Malik Nabers to break 3 tackles and score a 75-yard touchdown. Like, Marvin Harrison Jr., as great as he is, that's not really his game, which is why it's better that he went to the Cardinals and has an accurate quarterback like Kyler Murray throwing him the ball. So again, I think Malik Nabers is going to be very obviously the Giants' lone bright spot this year. They might win 7 games, but they might have a half decent offense because Malik Nabers is offensive rookie of the year. That is how I envision this season going for the Giants.
Yeah, like for reference, I hate to throw the Odell comp, but the 2014 Giants were not a very good team. They were a 6-10 offense. And while Eli Manning, yes, 4,400 yards, 30 touchdowns, like, we would be extremely shocked if Daniel Jones were able to get those numbers. Ruben Randall had 127 targets on the 2014 Giants. Can you name any wide receiver that you feel comfortable, or any target for that matter, in the Giants offense other than Malik Nabers, that you feel comfortable projecting over 80 targets?
No, like, I mean, the nice thing too, I heard John Daigle brought this up on Establish the Runs thing.
Yep.
Wan'Dale Robinson was second lowest in the NFL in average depth of target, and Jalen Hyatt led the NFL in average depth of target. So short to intermediate, that's all Malik Nabers.
Yeah, for sure. Any high-low concept, this guy, he's going to be feasting on.
Yeah, and Hyatt's going to just literally run clear out for Malik Nabers every single play. Like, that's legitimately what's going to happen every single play. So I'll swing it back here. Let's go to the tight end position, Danny. I got David Njoku as my guy at the tight end position. I mean, dude, the guy was the tight end 2 down the stretch last year, or the tight end 1, sorry, down the stretch, just ahead of Trey McBride. And the reason we're fading him now is because Joe Flacco isn't there. Like, is that why David Njoku is going tight end 11? Because he no longer has Joe Flacco? Like, that's legitimately the reason. And I get Joe Flacco played well last year. I get that they opened up the offense, but I actually do think that the Browns are going to throw the ball more this year. Everything they've said, they want to be up-tempo. They want to put things on Watson's shoulders. They're paying Watson all of this money. They don't have Nick Chubb. They're not going to run the ball at a super high rate. They're going to throw the ball like crazy. And Amari Cooper, I've had a little bit of concerns with. Jerry Jeudy is kind of a hit or miss wide receiver. I do think that David Njoku is the one piece of this offense that I feel very, very comfortable projecting him to be a positional advantage there, because I think that the wide receiver core is relatively flat. David Njoku, if Watson can play like Joe Flacco in the year like 2023, how is David Njoku not a top 5 tight end? He's one of the most athletic tight ends in the league. He is in his prime. He has taken a step every year the last 3 seasons. I think David Njoku, I've drafted him in my list, or in my home league, and I feel very, very good that I'm getting a guy that can compete with McBride, with Laporta, with the guys that are going higher than him. And I got him way, way later than those guys.
Yeah, like, real talk, if David Njoku is fully healthy going into the year, which by all accounts it sounds like it's going to be, what's the difference in his projection for the most part? I know this is going to sound like a hot take, but what's the difference in his projection potentially between him and Mark Andrews?
There's not a huge difference. And I mean, even we can, if you have anything else on Njoku, we can keep talking.
I will add a little bit.
Yeah, like talking about Kyle Pitts, like, is the guy you're going to talk about. Like, Kyle Pitts and Njoku, like, Njoku's been way better than Kyle Pitts the last couple of years. And I still prefer Kyle Pitts, but it is not a big difference.
Yeah, like I think Njoku is the cheapest of the tier 2 tight ends, and I'm throwing personally Bowers, Ferguson, and Njoku. Yes, I would prefer the other mid-tier tight ends, but like the gap between their ADPs right now is just so big to the point where if I know for a fact in every single one of my drafts, I can get David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, Brock Bowers in the 9th or 10th round, there's no need for me to take a tight end before that. And like you said with David Njoku, it's kind of funny because in my home league, I've noticed just this Njoku stand. Like for reference, basically there's a guy in my league that loves Joe Mixon, gets Joe Mixon every year. And I always like joke around with him, clown on him for it. And at my draft this year, somebody brought up the fact that, well, David Njoku is your Joe Mixon. And every single freaking year, I am all in on David Njoku. And that's not changing this year. In both of my 2 home leagues, I have David Njoku on my team. So you're not going to get me talking ill will about David Njoku. I've been a long time fan of that guy.
Yeah, well, and people pretend like he was terrible with Watson, like he wasn't tight end 8 in points per game 2 years ago, last time Watson was healthy. Like, what are we doing here, dude? Like, Joe Flacco isn't good. Like, he just threw the ball like crazy. If the Browns philosophically want to throw the ball like crazy, they're going to. They have a quarterback who makes a shit ton of money.
Yeah, 100%. And they also have that all-world running back literally coming off a folded leg, so that'll help that too.
Yeah, exactly. David Njoku, like I said, nobody was better down the stretch last year. He was the single biggest tight end league winner in fantasy football.
Yeah, it was insane, especially knowing that I had him on that BBM team that made the final. He really did help me down the stretch. But we'll just go into my tight end. Again, we were blasting about David Njoku for quite a bit. Kyle Pitts, I mean, you mentioned a 6'4", 240-pound freak athlete. Why don't I do that as well with Kyle Pitts? 23 years old, best offense of his career, still the same talent that put up 1,000 yards in his rookie season. Kirk Cousins coming in is as big of a quarterback upgrade as you could possibly ask for. The only one bigger in the NFL may be Zach Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. Like that is a level of upgrade you're getting here from Desmond Ridder to Kirk Cousins. And the beauty of the situation is that regardless of if it's Cousins, which we expect to be the quarterback throughout the 17 games, or if Cousins were to miss time, Michael Penix, they are both significant upgrades for Kyle Pitts. Apparently last year, he was dealing with a knee sprain that really inhibited his ability to move over the field. It sounds like by all accounts, he is fully recovered from that injury going into year 2 of it. He's still the same generational talent we pointed out in the 2020 class. And we're in a situation now where although there's Drake London and Bijan Robinson, there's a very real possibility from a talent standpoint, Kyle Pitts could flat out alpha this offense. As much as I love Drake London, like I think there's a real possibility both of them can be 140 plus target players.
Yeah, I mean, especially Darnell Mooney's their wide receiver 2. Ray McLeod is their wide receiver 3, and Rondell Moore's out for the season. So there's a very good chance that in 11 personnel, Kyle Pitts is on the field running very. Yeah, and the thing that people keep coming back to with Kyle Pitts is like, dude, he leads all tight ends since he's entered the NFL in deep targets and average depth of target. The thing that he doesn't get is layups. And the Rams offensive scheme is actually very, very good for that type of stuff. Not to mention Kirk Cousins is very, very good for that type of stuff. TJ Hawkinson, before he got to the Vikings, was also a big play tight end, a touchdown scoring tight end, but not a target commanding tight end. And I do think that Kyle Pitts has the ability to get a lot more of those short intermediate targets. Like, for God's sakes, this guy is 6'6", 235 pounds and runs like a 4.4, and he's never ran a drag route in his life.
So for reference, I'm glad you mentioned that. The corpse of Tyler Higbee in 2022. He ended up getting hurt last year, but in 2022, he finished as the tight end 6 in fantasy. He had 108 targets in that season. For reference, the most targets Kyle Pitts, the generational tight end we've seen in his career, has been 110 in his rookie season. Ever since then, he has not crossed 100 targets. So if he stays healthy, he's in this infrastructure that got freaking Tyler Higbee a mid-tight end 1 finish, and we're really doubting that Kyle Pitts can do it?
Yeah, not to mention that year, was it 2022 you said? He was literally, he was 4th in target share and 6th in target rate. And his average depth of target was 3.3 yards. So again, don't use him like that maybe, but also knowing that he can do the deep stuff as well and that he's finally going to get some of the layup targets, that is definitely a very strong bull case for Kyle Pitts, especially when you consider like Kirk Cousins is an accurate quarterback. Michael Penix, once he's in there, he can throw over the middle passes to Kyle Pitts all day and twice on Sunday. Like it's going to happen with Kyle Pitts this year. And just don't be the guy that's like, I can't draft Kyle Pitts. He burned me in years past. It's like you probably have already had your drafts, but I'm telling you, try and go buy this dude because he fell in a lot of the drafts that I'm in, and I know he's fallen in a lot of the drafts you guys have done.
And it's funny because out of the 4 redraft leagues I'm in, I have Kyle Pitts in 1, I have David Njoku in 2 of them. So they're clearly my guys because we're drafting them all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's head into the last position here. We just got a flex player, basically somebody going in flex territory that we really believe in. My guy's Ladd McConkey. I basically just looked at my underdog exposure and was like, okay, who's the guy that I've drafted the most of? And it's been Ladd McConkey. And the reason for that is because he has the upside to be Justin Herbert's #1 receiver. And he goes 7th, 8th round in most people's drafts. And I know Justin Herbert and the Chargers are not going to be extremely pass heavy this year, but Ladd McConkey is a short to intermediate separator. Well, who finished wide receiver 3 in fantasy points per game last year?
Keenan, baby.
Keenan Allen he's falling to like the 6th, 7th round of most people's fantasy drafts, and he was the short to intermediate target for Justin Herbert. And you know who the number 2 short to intermediate target was for Justin Herbert last year? Austin Eckler, who's not on the team either. So they're going to need to replace that production. People think because Justin Herbert has a big arm, he's this like gunslinger quarterback. He's actually quite conservative. And I think that Ladd McConkey is going to be a PPR stud because of that. When we watched Ladd McConkey coming out for the draft, what were the first things that we said? We're like, this is a PPR wide receiver 2 or better separator. His rookie season.
First thing you say is quick twitch separator, and people think, well, he's going to be, a Golden Tate, a Keenan Allen, just a slot
Dude, you drop prime Golden Tate on this offense right now, he would have 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns.
But that's the beauty of it, because even though people will automatically make those claims because his name's Ladd McConkey and is a white slot wide receiver of that frame, like he can win at all 3 levels. He can stretch the field vertically that people don't get. This is a legitimate 4.3 speed wide receiver.
Yeah, literally like a 97th percentile athlete too, who's like unbelievable 3-cone, unbelievable short shuttle, and ran in the 4.3s. Athletically, as we've talked about, he stacks up a lot closer to Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave than he does to Hunter Renfrow or whatever receiver most people put on him because he's a white receiver who played in the slot in college.
Yeah, I don't understand the pessimism with Ladd McConkey. I don't know if people are fading him because he's got a funny name or whatever, but this guy's an absolute stud. And the guy that actually took Ladd McConkey in my home league fully rebranded his team around it. Obviously, you guys know my nickname's the Ladster. He made his fantasy name Ladster with a picture of Ladd McConkey with a bandana and a beard. So shout out Rob. You know who you are.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about your flex guy and then let's get out of here. You got JSN. I mean, I definitely debated putting JSN as mine because I've drafted him the second most of any wide receiver on Underdog as well. He's a guy that I've now drafted, in all 3 of my redraft leagues? I literally have him in all 3 of my redraft leagues that I've drafted.
What percentage do you have him on Underdog right now? Because he is quite literally my 3rd highest rostered player on Underdog
19%.
right now. 22.9. So with JSN, I mean, we've made the case before. Ryan Grubb coming in, going to inherently increase the deep pass rate, going to inherently increase the pass rate over expectation. We saw the Washington Huskies last year ranked top 10 in both regards in the NCAA. JSN going into year 2, apparently he's been cooking all offseason in camp, has looked good in joint practices. And with JSN, I mean, I understand that people are concerned that he wasn't great as a rookie, but he was really hamstrung by his usage with Shane Waldron. Now with Ryan Grubb coming in, we could potentially see him work down the field. This is a guy in college we saw able to work at all 3 levels. So the fact that he's only really relegated to this short area target last year, a Wan'Dale Robinson, Mickey Mouse type of target in that Shane Waldron scheme, I'm really excited to see how Ryan Grubb is able to really take JSN to that next level. On top of that, Tyler Lockett, declining old wide receiver, saw his lowest yards per route run since 2017 this year. I think JSN is very poised to be a top 2 wide receiver on this team, and people are pricing it accordingly, but I think there's an opportunity. This could be a 1A, 1B situation with him and DK Metcalf. I think DK Metcalf is your prototypical ball-winning wide receiver that can only stretch the field. I think JSN, you mentioned with Ladd McConkey, is your prototypical PPR wide receiver.
Yeah, and there's definitely a range of outcomes where JSN misses because, the comps after his rookie season are not great. But again, we're applying some context to it and saying that there's definitely a chance that this guy at his price tag too. I mean, 7th, 8th round is where most people were getting him. Again, sharper leagues, he probably went 5-6 turn or mid 6th round or something like that. But for the most part, I think he is a great upside swing, especially if you guys were playing in leagues with 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, full PPR, and you just needed some upside for your bench. JSN is perfect in that kind of format because I think the upside for him, because of how good of a prospect he was, he did show good in good results in reception perception, like we said. If Ryan Grubb and this offense are throwing it all over the yard, JSN has 140 target upside. It's just, does he have the talent that we saw from him in college?
Yeah, that is the main question mark. If he can get back to that Ohio State JSN that was basically everybody's wide receiver 1. Again, he was my wide receiver 2. I felt like I was on an island there because you check Twitter, you check the media, JSN was listed as 1 across the board and does get that first round capital. I still think he could very much be that level of prospect that people anticipated coming into the draft.
Yep, absolutely. So you guys saw our My Guys team. One quick recap here. You could see Burrow, Pacheco, James Cook, Malik Nabers, Brandon Aiyuk, David Njoku, and Ladd McConkey for me. Again, we did this fantasy football style. So these are the guys that we're hedging our bets on. I know we had some hits last year for sure. Jordan Addison was my flex. Yep. Breece Hall was my RB1. I had a lot of guys that I was really excited about last year, but we also had some misses. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was my guy at quarterback, and that didn't really work out for sure. Danny, I'll let you go through yours here.
Yeah, and like I said, my guys, Kyler Murray, Devon Achane, Jonathon Brooks, along with Nico Collins, Rashee Rice, Kyle Pitts, and JSN accompanying my flex spot. Like Corey said, we're trying to make it like, your fantasy football lineup, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 flex. So yeah, if I had to just make a team of my guys and you had to make a team of my guys, that's what they would look like.
Absolutely. So who are your my guys this year? Comment them down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. As we plugged at the beginning of the video, Underdog now has a free pick live for all users, not just new depositors. If you guys are users of promo code FSE 3 years ago, this free pick should also be in your pick'em lobby over on Underdog Fantasy. Get ready, get geared up for the start of the fantasy football season, the NFL season. I am so sick of jabbering about these players. I just want to see how the players actually perform. And again, new users on Underdog Fantasy can get up to 1,000 in bonus cash. And again, 2 days or 3 days from now, when we're doing our first live stream of the year for Thursday Night Football, we will draw the winner of the lucky promo code FSE user who can get to see their favorite team play, 2 tickets to go see them, $500 value. We will announce that on our Thursday live stream. And then finally, too, you guys can see all of the NFL promos on the calendar for this week that Underdog has going live. Sign up over on Underdog Fantasy, use code FSE, and our weekly rankings manifesto that we have there with the Vegas information, with where the sharps are betting, with the quarterback matchups, running back matchups, and our weekly rankings will be live for you all season long, so you guys can take advantage of that. So if you use code FSE, if you've already done it this summer, by the way, if you did it to get our draft guide, we'll send out a blast once the weekly rankings manifesto is ready, and you'll have access to that all season long as well. So with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.